Thank you. So we covered a bit of the game last time. We had kind of a non-traditional process in making it. So I talked a bit about the game today earlier. Today we'll talk about sort of the process of developing it, the philosophy, and not a bit of lessons learned, but sort of the journey is the reason for doing it. So the game, the world started when Alina was an animation student, and she needed to do a final project in traditional animation, so she invented this world with called the Shrugs, with these creatures that shapeshift and leave the island in return and have their own community. It was a traditional, literally hand-drawn animated film. You can find it on the web. It's called Shrug. And it's very tied in with her like kind of sort of philosophically with her early childhood. She's Belgian, but grew up in the States for 12 years and was very taken with the Southwest and the geography. And so that kind of permeated her sense of space. And also the general idea of living in harmony. And so when she was done with that, this was I think 2009. It's kind of like, okay, what do I do with a nice film that won an Annecy Award, which means something in the animation world. But where do you go from here creatively? And so she decided that there was not much future in short films because it would only go to like short film audiences, and she wanted to reach more people with the message. And so then she decided that she wanted to turn it into a game, sort of work with the younger generation of Shrugs. The ones who are children in the film would now be the main characters. Started learning some game design, lived in an environmental community along the way. But basically, she started the Kickstarter in 2014 because she had decided to turn it into a game, made some prototypes, and wanted to get a team together to make the game. And so I was sitting home innocently one night practicing the piano. I had not developed a game before myself either. And I had Facebook open back before Facebook was as evil as it is today. It's not an advisable way to practice, but. And so somebody had shared her Kickstarter page, and I saw the two characters playing music at each other. I thought, this looks cool. I'll become a supporter for that, which I did. And then we got in touch, and she came to Copenhagen. She lived, or was staying with Sabina and Kay over there for a weekend. And who lived around the corner from me, so I went and we met and decided that we worked well together. So let's see if this plays. Yes, here it is.
We are the wind and the sun and the rain.
We are the wings beating gusts through the air.
We are the grass with roots deep in this ground. We are the children who play with sound.
We are the drum whose beat signal change. We are the water, so murky and strange.
We are the people gathered round in the dark. We are the flame of the family heart.
We're the carriers who bring the message of spring.
We are the flower that blew through the snow.
We are the leaves that grow thick and green.
Månen. En mycket fin ost, skulle jag säga.
We are the power that breaks winter's heart.
Thank you.
So this kind of summarizes the philosophy that she was after. Was not just making the game, but having a game that's kind of a community space that both players and developers and just interested people could use kind of as a central meeting point. And so when we decided to work together, I joined and we've turned my dining room into Shrug headquarters, as we called it, and each evening we just make enough space to eat dinner. And then went out in the forest to record sounds. One of the challenges of doing audio, if there are any audio people here instead of the tech track, was that she wanted all the sounds to be natural and sound organic and like folk music, but they shouldn't sound recognizable. So it should not be, oh, this is a guitar or a banjo, or this is a tree. So I had to make natural sounds, but they shouldn't sound known, but they should sound familiar. So that was my challenge for a number of years. Earlier in my life, I decided that life was too short to be a programmer, so I didn't want to have anything to do with that. So a lot of our funding went to finding some programmers. So we hooked up with a contracting agency in Denmark who very fortunately had Milos, who worked in Belgrade in Serbia. And so we'll talk about him in just a minute. So basically that was the three of us working on developing the game for 5 years, and I'll skip over all the kind of boring post-mortem stuff. We made this decision incorrectly and should have done that, because that's all obvious, or in plenty of places. But what I would like to talk about is kind of parallels of change in the universe and changing expectations, and what constitutes success these days in our world. So, as I said, we first met Milos. Milos is also not, he was the programmer, but he's not a trained computer scientist. He has a master's in tropical forestry that he got in Copenhagen. You know, he's from Belgrade. And myself, my undergraduate degree was chemistry and my PhD is in physics. My advisor was in math, but I'm on as a musician. And Alina was a traditional animator. So our experience in making games was somewhat limited, you could say. I just want to show you something from the game. You've got the two characters, but they have two different ways of motion. So she walks around in like defined areas. She's got like a defined area. She can like walk kind of an X, Y pattern. And he works much more as a platform, sort of only right to left, and oftentimes left to right as often as right to left. So both of this combination really goes against kind of traditional gaming where you choose one or the other. And this, for example, are kind of, I'd say, inexperience, or just choosing to do, not being tied by genre was, for example, one of the challenges. If we showed the game to testers who were really hardcore gamers, they had very definite genre expectations, like this is how a platformer should work, this is how like a roaming game should work, walking simulator should work. And since this had just enough of the characteristics of one or the other, they'd say, okay, this is this kind of game, it should work like that. And then when it didn't, they'd get very upset. And so I had to learn how to deal with that by explaining that we were coming at development with a fresh eye, to put it kindly, and that we broke many conventions, and a few of them we broke intentionally. And so that kind of freed the players from their genre expectations, so they could just enjoy the game as it is, which is just kind of an interesting thing to. So back to Milos here, and I will paraphrase what he said. I had him make a nice 2-minute recitation on what his experiences in learning the game, working with us on the game. And he's done a lot of remote development before. What he found special here was like working with a team of non-developers and working very closely. We had a really close Skype relationship, and talking about many things and how that helped him in his development. And also, he traditionally worked on just kind of engine kind of things, and he spent hours and hours and hours with Alina, fine-tuning animations and sort of fine-tuning sounds with me. So it was very much getting the chemistry working properly, and as we've seen there, and keeping each other in awareness. How many people here have done like remote collaborations? A few, okay, yeah. So you know, like there's kind of the technical aspect of doing it, which is like just keeping in touch, but there's also the kind of emotional mind attention part of keeping focused together as a team when you're not all together in the room. I do have to say that there's a balance to be struck, because at the time we had Shrug headquarters in my dining room. My music studio was right next door in the living room. And again, if you're doing audio, you don't necessarily want somebody listening to every single sound you're making. So a certain amount of distance is helpful. But one of the happy things that is when we finally got the game developed and out was people's reaction. And this has to do with like what is the definition of success. I'll read this because it's maybe a bit short. So somebody who wrote about the game wrote, "The way Shri and Lee assist one another with minimal communication feels like a lesson in how we are still connected even when distant. The way shared experiences can result in a shared dialect no matter how far removed." And that made us very happy. I mean, so we could kind of say, would I trade that quote for 1,000 sales or not? But I think this is like kind of our definition of success as opposed to high ranking in Steam is reaching people. And let's see. Okay, so Alina recorded a nice 2-minute audio segment on her reflections on making the game. And if I pause for a minute, it's just more, again, it's more success defined as, in the original sense for the Kickstarter, where we developed a community and people sort of felt the emotional attachment to the game that we wanted, as opposed to having 500 million people playing the game. And also, it's kind of looking forward. Alina is now at NYU in the Game Center getting a master's. I guess that's one of her, based on the game. So for our further development, we'll have to kind of fit in where we're allowed there. And also looking at other perceptions, how the shrugs fit in life. You can see we've made a little AR experiment. I have some of these little stickers if you want, and you can use them, and they will put one of the shrugs in your in your reality, as it were. So unfortunately, I don't have any of the interviews where. Oh well, so we knew this was going to be a bit of a. We were trying to set this as a virtual dialogue. So apparently, instead it turned out to be a bit of a monologue. But in any case, I'd be happy to chat with any of you about the game. I'll be around for the rest of the time, and I'd be happy to share our experiences with you. Thank you.